Well, welcome to the 700 Club. In a new arms race for nuclear dominance, China is escalating its arsenal. And with Russia's help, it could soon surpass the United States.
National security correspondent Caitlin Burke is following this story. She reports that defense experts are concerned that America could lose the nuclear edge.
Newly unclassified information from the Pentagon makes clear that while China is quickly gaining, it has not yet surpassed U.S. nuclear capabilities. At the end of 2022, however, the communist power had amassed more intercontinental range missile launchers, or ICBMs.
So that means kind of the holes that they would be able to put long-range missiles in, capable of striking the U.S. homeland. And so this is just the latest step in China's buildup.
While many of China's ICBMs remain empty, their strategic partnership with Russia is a concern.
Russia is providing fuel for China's reactors that produce nuclear material, these reactors that produce plutonium. And plutonium is the important nuclear material that China needs for its nuclear buildup. U.S.
intelligence officials predict Beijing will soon be able to produce enough weapons-grade plutonium to increase its nuclear warhead stockpile as much as fourfold in the next 12 years. Those nuclear warheads would likely fill the now empty ICBMs. That kind of a buildup would also allow China to match the arsenals currently deployed by the U.S. and Russia.
China is refusing to sit down and negotiate with us. To me, that tells us that China is on an upwards trajectory, and it has no interest in negotiating or stalling its nuclear buildup.
Shortly after the Chinese spy balloon dustup, President Xi Jinping pressed military leaders for an even faster elevation of his armed forces. Meanwhile, Russia backed out of a nuclear arms control treaty with the U.S., leading experts to urge the Pentagon to develop a new strategy.
We can't simply just try again for arms control if it's not working. We'll have to do everything we can to strengthen our own nuclear deterrent and make sure we're building the right capabilities that we need to deter Russia and China, and make sure that they can't ever think that even as they build up their nuclear weapons that they can get away with using them.
The Heritage Foundation's Patty Jane Geller, a senior policy analyst for nuclear deterrence and missile defense, says U.S. capabilities have thus far stayed the same as Russia and China compete in an unofficial arms race to nuclear dominance.
The problem is the leaders in the arms race are Russia and China. The United States has not quite entered it yet.
Senior Pentagon officials say the U.S. is working to modernize all three legs of its land, sea, and air-based arsenals. The question remains whether the pace will be quick enough to keep our adversaries at bay. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Well, here's the problem with nuclear weapons and the buildup of nuclear weapons. You're actually throwing away money, and then you're creating a stockpile that you have to maintain and you have to watch over, and you hope that you never use them. And who wants to live in a world where these nuclear arsenals are unleashed? That has been the whole mutual assured destruction doctrine, why other countries want to get involved and try to build up their nuclear weapons makes no sense to me, because you're creating something you will never use. If you do use them, you don't want to survive it. You don't want to live in that world. So talk about zero-sum game. There's no upside to doing this. And so I don't understand what China is trying to prove, nor do I understand any kind of reaction on our part. The doctrine remains between the nuclear powers. We will have mutual assured destruction, and in that, the delivery mechanism is the crucial thing. Can you assure in a mutually assured destruction that your weapons will be launched in counter to their weapons? That's the whole game here. So that's where we should pay attention to. We don't need more nuclear missiles. We certainly don't need more nuclear warheads. And if any one of those that is manufactured ever gets into the wrong hands, gets into the hands of a terrorist or some kind of radical group, well, then say goodbye to your civilization, because they will absolutely set it off. Here's something else to worry about in other news. Our president says Americans can rest assured that our banking system is safe. Well, unfortunately, that statement has got me worried about my bank, and is my bank safe? And the failure of two banks has rattled markets and could affect the Fed's policy of raising interest rates to fight inflation. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. President Biden addressed the nation Monday, telling Americans there's no threat of a widespread collapse.
Americans can rest assured that our banking system is safe. Your deposits are safe. Let me also assure you, we will not stop at this. We'll do whatever is needed.
Still, customers at Silicon Valley Bank lined up to get their money out, and some regional banks saw their stock prices plummet due to retreating investors. The president is calling on Congress for more regulation on small banks. Some in the banking industry are blaming the SVB collapse on the Federal Reserve's policy of raising interest rates to fight inflation. Greg McBride of Bankrate told CBN's Faith Nation concern over the health of the economy could affect the Fed's decision whether to continue raising rates.
If they're still swatting hockey pucks away trying to stabilize the financial system, then no, interest rates, further interest rate hikes are certainly going to be on hold for some time.
According to this morning's government report, inflation was up 0.4% as expected, with inflation running at 6% over last year. Well, Americans on both coasts are bracing for major storms. California expecting flooding rains up to 6 inches and winds nearly topping 60 miles an hour. New evacuation warnings issued for rain-soaked Santa Cruz County. In Monterey County, the Pajaro River overwhelming this community after a levee gave way early Saturday morning. Thousands are out of their homes, and it could be weeks before they can return. Damage to farms and crops is estimated at $330 million. On the East Coast, a nor'easter could dump up to 30 inches of snow on parts of New York and New England tonight. The mayor of New York City already declaring an emergency. Well, the week after daylight savings times presents a challenge, or at least an inconvenience for most Americans, but for some, it can be life-threatening. Studies show a 24% increase in heart attacks the Monday after the time change, as well as a surge in hospitalizations due to irregular heartbeat. Doctors suspect it's related to a disruption of sleep. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and the CDC reports someone dies from cardiovascular disease every 34 seconds. Doctors say many of these deaths can be avoided by making healthier choices. But as Lori Johnson explains, most Americans don't even know where to start.
Whether it's a heart attack, stroke, or plaque buildup, doctors say poor lifestyle choices largely contribute to heart disease, and adopting healthier habits can turn things around. But do Americans know how to do that? Although heart disease remains America's leading cause of death, the good news is the number of people dying from it has been steadily decreasing over the last 40 years. But that downward trend stopped about 5 years ago and has remained the same ever since. A Cleveland Clinic survey finds Americans harbor a number of misconceptions when it comes to heart health. For example, 10% believe a fast food diet is the most heart healthy, while 72% incorrectly think low-fat or low-carb diets are best, while only 15% know the healthiest is actually the Mediterranean diet.
It has the best data for actually reducing strokes and heart attacks. And there's large randomized clinical trials that show this.
Many don't know the Mediterranean diet consists mostly of fruits and vegetables, aka good carbs.
So if you think about your plate as a pie chart, 60 to 70% of that should be fruits and vegetables.
The Mediterranean diet also includes healthy fats like olive oil.
Extra virgin olive oil has an anti-inflammatory component called oleic acid. And we know that some cardiovascular risk is driven by overall or systemic inflammation within the body, so that can be helpful.
Beans, poultry, and fish are on the health menu, but not shellfish, red meat, pork, or processed foods.
Chips, crackers, pastries, lunch meats, those are the killers.
Losing excess weight can be good for the heart, although a whopping 71% of us don't know the best way to do that.
A majority of Americans thought that exercise was the biggest thing that we could do to lose weight, where we know that really isn't true. Now, exercise is important for overall cardiovascular health, But if you really want to get your weight down and become a healthy weight, the biggest thing that people need to do is modify their diet.
Too many Americans don't realize the importance of keeping their blood pressure and cholesterol in check.
Most people should be seeing their primary care doctor, and they should be checking that.
And more people need to know there are other heart attack symptoms beyond chest pain and pressure.
For women, I typically say also that nausea or any type of gastrointestinal symptoms that just are lingering and not going away, you should at least think about, maybe it's my heart.
So while there's a lot we can do to lower our risk of heart disease, the first step is getting the right information. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Thank you, Lori. Well, more than 100,000 Ukrainians who sought refuge in the United States after the Russian invasion will be allowed to remain beyond a one-year deadline. A special program gave quick access to Ukrainians fleeing the war, but it's limited and must be renewed. The Biden administration granting that extension to some 113,000 people in the days before the deadline expired. In Turkey, hundreds of thousands of people are still displaced in the aftermath of the devastating earthquakes with no permanent shelter and limited food and water. Victims need outside help to survive. As Dan Rainey shows us, CBN's Operation Blessing is there to meet the needs.
It's been just over a month since a massive earthquake hit Turkey, and the devastation is really unbelievable. Demolition has begun, cleanup has begun in many areas. The most that's been accomplished so far is just clearing the streets enough for cars and trucks to get through. Many people in this area simply left after the earthquake. They either went to live with other family members, they found a new home somewhere, they rented an apartment, or some even just up and left the country altogether. The people that stayed either because they don't have family elsewhere, they are too poor to be able to travel, or their family's too poor to be able to host them, or they simply don't want to leave their home city. Whatever the reason was for people to stay, those are the people that Operation Blessing is here to help. Operation Blessing's been doing numerous food distributions. The stuff in here will keep a family going for quite a while. Sugar, rice, flour, cooking oil, pasta, and more. These food boxes are really making a difference in people's lives, and they are extremely appreciative for them.
Çok teşekkür ederiz. Thank you very much. We are thankful just to be alive, and we are very grateful for your help.
Thank you very much. Çok sağ olun.
So Operation Blessing is here in Hatay, Turkey, giving people what they need right now: food, water, and hope.
Gordon, Operation Blessing providing a lifeline to people desperately in need.
And that's you if you're part of the Operation Blessing disaster relief team. If you haven't given to the fund, I invite you to do it right now. All you have to do is call us, 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can write to us. Just put Disaster Relief Fund in a memo line of a check to CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. You can also text to give, OBDR, to 71777. And your gift will go into a designated fund for disaster relief victims. And whether that's Ukrainian refugees trying to make it in Poland, what's happening in Turkey, the ongoing devastation there, 300 miles of that area of Turkey was destroyed by this earthquake. Millions of people affected. Those who were able to leave have done so, but now the ones that stay, they need the basics of life. They need food, they need shelter, they need heat, they need the things that you and I take for granted, and we want to be there for them in their time of need. If you want to help, call us right now. 1-800-700-7000, or you can go to CBN.com. There's a place on the giving page where you can designate, and again, it's a designated fund, Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund.